Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's Weekly Energy Boost. My name is Elisheva, and I am here today with a previous guest who is the best person I could think of to chat with me today about a question or a topic that I have received. I would say it's probably number 2 on the list of most demanded episodes. Relationships comes first, of course, but number 2 is actually, and I don't know how surprising this is going to be for anyone, is mental health. That it's not necessarily obvious or clear to most of us what the intersection of mental health and spirituality is. And this week specifically, according to the Kabbalistic calendar, we are pushed to turn inward. And if you've been a listener for more than a year, you know, around end of December, we usually have a conversation about confrontation, whether it's anger, proactive confrontation. I can't remember all of the episodes, but there's definitely been a ton of them on the topic of confrontation. So we're choosing to use the energy of dealing with things head on, even confronting the self and the shadows and the history, to use that energy to go inward, not confronting anyone outside of ourselves, but going inward and having a clear and honest and direct look at what's going on. And once we've done that, we can map the road to healing. So for that reason, Karen Adler is with me this morning. You may remember her from an episode we did in 2020, aptly titled Transforming Grief. So we're here today and actually next week. This is, I'll save what next week's episode is focused on for the end of the episode. So there's a little cliffhanger, but the reality is this whole month of Capricorn begs us to be serious, to be grounded, to be realistic. I think one of the most frustrating things about Capricorns is how uber realistic they are, or they're very much focused on realism versus fantasy. And so we want to use all of that conspiracy of energies to support us in taking big steps this week to strengthening ourselves, not only spiritually, but also mentally and emotionally. Weekly Energy Boost is a 7-day spiritual weather forecast where we aim to provide our listeners with the most practical and powerful tools to navigate the coming 7 days. We do that by basing our conversation on the wisdom of Kabbalah, its teachings, its tools. And even though we're focused on the opportunity or the potential challenges of this week, every episode provides you with wisdom and tools that you can use anytime. And this week is no different. Someone reached out to me, sent a message asking if we could talk about one request that stands out to me was she asked if we could talk about Kabbalah and mental health. And I said, what are your questions? What specifically would you like to hear about? And she said, it's not always clear to me in terms of self-care and what's making the problem bigger and what's making the problem smaller. And I feel like a lot of what our listeners ask for are not only ideas, consciousness, wisdom, but also tools on how to prevent ourselves from flying off the handle, from falling into a pit of, we call them movies, right? When you confabulate and you start to imagine what's really going on and what they're saying about you and what they're doing to you behind your, to really ground us and get us into that state of pause so that we can operate from a higher place. And I'm wondering if, Karen, you can start by helping us out with that.
I have a tool for that, which I'd love to do. And I'd also like to say that anything we're reactive to, anything that triggers us, anytime we feel like we want to confront somebody, is always going to be about you. And it's always going to be about something from your past, probably even your childhood. And so that's why that to recognize that is so important, and that internal work. And the way I see mental health is inner flexibility. It's a balance of mind, body, and spirit. And it involves clearing out whatever clutters within us that gets in the way of us really revealing the light, which is the spiritual piece of it, doing our life's purpose. That's what's in the way, is this constriction in us. So we're kind of like this. We're like a tight rubber band. And then somebody does something and we do that and we react to it. And then we make it about them and we become kind of a victim to it. And it really is about us and our past and things, our traumas, the things we haven't let go of, that we really are called to go inward and explore and unravel and dissipate, so that we can be like this soft, flexible space, something that we can even grow. And what does it hold? It holds light. It holds intuition. It holds epiphanies. It holds answers. And Kabbalah calls it the tree of life, is within that space. And it's part of everything. So we don't have to try so hard. So just to know that the goal is to go from being tight to like a solid oak tree, that something happens in the external world. And it's not that we're disconnected from it. It's that we respond to it, maybe in a compassionate way, maybe in a strong way, but it just kind of makes us sway like this. It keeps us soft inside so that we're able to stay grounded and actually come up with solutions and even find ways to grow from what happened, find some wisdom from it to make ourselves bigger. That's really sort of the intersection of mental health and spirituality for me. And that's kind of what Kabbalah has brought to me in a much bigger way. So I'd love, if it's possible, to start with a little tool that I do in every session with every one of my clients. I usually start it. If I don't start with it, maybe I'll let them talk a little bit. But because this is so important, it's something that I always will do in my sessions to get people in a place where they can receive the answers to what they're looking for.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I understood correctly, because what you said was so powerful and I want to say revolutionary even, is that any time we are reactive, right? Reactive means something triggered us, something activated us. We're no longer in that calm, present, right? Reactive is really when we move out of the present and we move to the past or the future. You're saying that all of those reactive moments are rooted in something from the past. It's not about what's happening or what's being done right now. We're really reverting back to a former self or a previous moment.
And it's calling us to heal it. That's why it's so important. That's why everyone that comes into our life, even, our worst enemy is our greatest angel, because they're taking us to a place where they want, where your body's saying, please heal me, look at me. Emotions are 3-year-olds, basically. And they just need you. They're tugging at your sleeve and they get louder and louder and louder, and you're on the phone and finally you're like, what? And things have to get kind of bad before you pay attention to them. And your emotions are the same way. And so when you are triggered by something, it requires attention. Not you to be reactive, not to send off that email, get on the internet and make them see your way, whatever that is. That's not the path. The path is to really pay attention to your 3-year-old, get at its level and say, I see you, I hear you, I'm listening. And I want you to be expressed.
Wow.
Then miracles happen from that point. We could have world peace. We won't have war if people do that. That's why it's revolutionary. If you can put those things together and understand that, that's what really Kabbalah brought to me, is to say, you don't have to go far out. And, I was a social worker, I'm a family of social workers. That was our job, was service to depletion. And what I realized is, no, you can do all that, but start with you. Start with where your need is to go save everybody or to work to depletion. What's that about? Well, I know what that's about. I've done a lot of work on myself. I've had to do a lot of work on myself. And now I can honestly say I feel I'm balanced. I love my work. I see each of my clients as a person, as an energy exchange. And that we're both getting something out of this and we're both growing from it. So I'm never burned out. And I see each of my clients as a person who is going into the world to do something great. And this is a really important moment. And so we're looking at each other here I am, let's get to work because we've got big things to do in the world. And what has happened I don't want to get off topic because I do want to do this thing, but is that my clientele has become big vessel people. What do I mean? They're beacons of light. They're people who are doing great things in the world. They're reaching a lot of people. And the more I work on myself, the more that happens, the more reach I have in the world, the closer we are to transforming the world situation. So that's why it's so important. And that's why why mental health is, it's really a difference between I want to be happier, I want to live life better, to I'm transforming myself and I'm transforming the world. So that's the shift.
The goal isn't external, it's internal.
It is. And then the external changes.
So this exercise you're going to take us through, is it something you can do while you're driving? Is it what's your recommendation on how to use it?
I was thinking about that. There's two things. One is, if you are out at all in a place where you can lay down, put your knees up and feet flat and close your eyes, great. Or you can sit in a chair as long as you have support. And I was thinking, well, we'll wait if you're driving, but you can keep your eyes open and drive, and it may make you more present, and you might be a better driver.
Okay.
So I think
no, because sometimes when we say people, pause now, and you can.
If I say close your eyes, drivers do not close your eyes. Okay, pay attention to the road and do the best you can to just kind of follow, because it's very simple. It may be even something you've done before, but it's so incredibly important. And it's basically involves breath and grounding. So I'm going to ask everyone to sort of either sit in your chair with your feet flat, supported, arms to your side. Or if you're in a place that you could maybe lay down and close your eyes and put your feet up, it's the best way to kind of feel your feet on the earth. And just close your eyes gently and take one nice long cleansing breath. And just start to notice the support of the earth under your feet, behind your back, your head, wherever you're feeling something supporting you. I want you to just pay attention to that. And then be aware of your feet and put a little pressure on your feet. Maybe wiggle your toes. And you can't be in your mind if you're thinking of your feet. You just can't. So the idea is to lower and slow down the energy and move from thinking to experiencing. That's the goal. And so this is very simple. It is basically a normal inhale and then a long exhale, holding at the end just a little longer and imagining that breath is going all the way down to the bottom of your feet. And then just kind of wiggle your toes when your breath goes there. And then you'll feel your breath sort of want to come in and fill your heart. Going all the way in without trying, just allowing. And then allowing the breath to softly move all the way to the end of the breath. Holding it just a little bit longer. Let's do one more. Nice full inhale. And then an exhale all the way down to the bottom of your feet, holding at the end of the breath just a little bit. And you may start to be aware of some stirrings in your body. Some may be pleasurable, maybe a tingling or a bubbling. Some may be unpleasant, maybe a tension. It's something you're just kind of become more aware of in your body. And just pay attention to it without doing anything, just be aware of it. And then imagine a light coming in through the crown of your head, and its job is to soften everything it touches. And that light would be your surrounding light, is your potential. It's yours. And it's entering in through the crown of your head and clearing your mind of thoughts, letting them move out, moving between your eyes, between your temples. Just feel the softening behind your head and your jaw, your lips. Your throat, the back of your neck. You may let it just kind of move a little bit as the light moves in, creating space for expression. Down through your shoulders and your arms, which are the extension of your heart, all the way through to your fingertips. Down then through your heart space, the house of your soul. Feel a softening there, a bit of a release through your back, to your diaphragm and your belly. Just using that breath to soften and draw that light down into your whole pelvic region, the hinge of your hips, your glutes, and the lowest part of your spine. Down your thighs, through your knees, your calves, your ankles, and then down into your feet, almost imagining that at the bottom of your feet, roots are going into the earth. Widening, thickening, and then drawing in the nutrients of the earth through your body, mingling with that light. Just kind of feel the softening, the balancing of all those elements. And just ask yourself one question before we finish. Who do you want to be in this time, in this moment in time? Who do you want to be? And imagine somebody who is an example of sanity, of balance. And just ask yourself who you want to be. How do you want to show up in this world? And take one last cleansing breath. And then you can come back to the right here and right now. Feel the support of the earth, feel your feet. And then you can open your eyes.
And that's how you start every session?
It's a very important part of it, because people become then more awake to their soul. The places in their body that are holding the history of things that have happened that they haven't yet dealt with, that want to be heard. And it's really that simple. And it's a game of looking at it. It's kind of like a pendulum. We kind of observe where I talk about what are you feeling in your body. They describe it. And then we breathe into it. A memory might come with it, something, depending where it is. That's another topic to go into, where we hold things. But once it's expressed, then you can express it as to, not about. It's more efficient that way. And then it releases and softens. And then we look over here. And it's just this exploration of looking at it, letting it to be expressed, releasing it. And then what you find then is there's more space. What's there more space for? More light, more surrounding light, more being a channel for other people. And so you just grow, and that everything that's happening in the world today, every person that you meet that challenges you is a person that is there to help you stretch that vessel, and you can, and go back and release. And so that's really that's the whole That's the whole game. And what is super important in this is that I'm really aware of this with the internet and the vitriol and the division, is that everyone needs a place to safely express their truth. And what I'm realizing, it's becoming more and more clear, is there's many truths. And everybody is very clear that their truth is the truth. And it's only problematic when you engage in a fight with somebody about it and you think they're going to change them. Oh, I'm going to send this. This is going to prove it to them, and then they send it and it starts the war, right? And really, you just need to express your truth. And is the internet a safe place for your truth? Even sometimes is your family a safe place for your, that's why families, now we're like dividing like atoms now. It was just like a political division. Now it's like division within people who once agreed with each other. And so we're splitting like atoms, which is how the opponent works. Divide and conquer. Very successful tool. And we all fall prey to it if we haven't done our work. And that's why activism is important. But the problem with activism is that it's tainted with trauma. And so people are fighting each other's trauma, and they're not a very good spokesperson for their cause. So I always say to people who are activists, be an activist, but make sure you check where you're coming from. If you want to be a good spokesman for the cause, I'm all for it. Just be a good spokesperson. So get your work done, get your trauma dealt with. And then you are coming from a clean place. And so that's what's so important about really going within and doing that work, and also having a spiritual perspective and seeing people as an opportunity to grow. And then you'll find yourself in that space that we were exploring in that meditation, which is this the connection to all there is. So you can't be lonely in this place. You can't be separate in this place. You're part of everything. And then you can feel each other's humanity. Then you can actually listen to each other. So everyone needs a safe place to tell their truth. That's why therapy is good. That's why having a teacher that you trust, somebody that you can go and speak your truth. The reason I like the body-centered approach, because I believe trauma lives in the body and it can't be talked about and healed. It has to be explored and expressed. So in my office, it's a padded room, and you can get as loud as you want, and you can say whatever you want without consequences, without judgment. So you can scream that thing, and then I can say, what does that remind you of? Well, when my father left and I was abandoned. Oh, well, talk to your father. Get it out, move it, feel it, clear it. And then when you think about that issue that you were dealing with, it's softer. You're more available to hear someone else's perspective, or to connect, or to not even talk about it. In my family, there's kind of a rule where unity is the most important thing. And if we disagree on issues and we're in a place to listen, we're listening, but we're not letting this divide us. That's not happening. And it's like, it works. Everyone's in agreement with it. There's a lot of harmony in our home, even though everyone doesn't agree with each other.
So it's alignment, but not agreement.
Right. Exactly. And, your family might not be the place that you speak about certain issues because it's not safe. And you're just going to get angry and someone's going to flip the table and it's going to be over. So that's why, but it's because of the past. It's because of something in the childhood that has to be dealt with.
Yeah, I do want to talk about childhood, but as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking about our listeners. I mean, you said a moment ago, the dad left, talk to the dad. How important is it to actually talk to the people who we feel were part of creating the trauma in real life?
Not that important.
Not that important.
No, it's not necessary. It may be I've seen a lot of healing in relationships and they have talked about it, but they're coming from light, not a fight, not an accusation, not a putting that person into a defensive position. It's coming from truth. It's coming from a softer space. And I've seen miracles happen in relationships.
Personally, I believe that as well. I wanted to hear from a professional, Kabbalistically speaking, that, there's lots of conversation, lots of discussion Kabbalistically around that idea of talking to the person's soul.
Yeah.
That you don't really, you don't need their body to be in front of you to resolve anything. And that's also important, especially if we have unresolved issues with people who've passed on.
Yep.
But also the fact that, and again, this is exactly what Karen said, but in Kabbalah speak, that whatever a person awakened in you is calling to be healed. So there's it's I don't want to say there's nothing between you and the other person, but the real work is between you and healing the part of you that was triggered or hurt by whatever took place. And I want to throw something in before I give the mic back to you, Karen, just because for those of you who are newer to Weekly Energy Boost, one of the concepts that comes up repeatedly, probably comes up monthly, if not bi-monthly, that the soul, before coming to the physical reality, chooses its circumstances, chooses its zodiac sign, chooses its country, culture, language, religion, parents, siblings, chooses all of the right ingredients to create the best setup for us to do our spiritual work in our lifetime. So childhood is the installation of that program.
Yes.
So when difficult things happen, and difficult things happen to everyone, I think that's one of the revolutions of the mental health movement now, is that all of us are traumatized by something. And I've been doing a lot of reading and exploration around this idea. You know, people don't have to go through poverty or violence to have trauma. And I think when I was younger, the perception was trauma is created by extreme circumstance. No. And it's really not. So I think the first step in creating that healing is the acceptance that I needed to go through what I needed, not because I deserved it, it's two very different. I deserved it and I'm taking responsibility for it are two different things. Yeah. I needed to go through that in order to become the adult I am today so that I could heal it. But my soul, prior to entering a body, chose to heal these things. The childhood is what programs us on a conscious level, and sometimes it's not conscious, but the goal is that it will be part of our conscious work. And I'll make it concrete just because I think I'm talking too much in the abstract. But let's say, for example, a soul chooses in a particular lifetime, and it's probably successive lifetimes of work, to speak their truth, to use their voice, to feel worthy and deserving of space, right? It's a self-esteem issue, but many people I find specifically have challenge with communication, with speaking up, with voicing their needs. So it's not, the soul is perfect. The soul is pristine and it comes into a body, and the body is the costume that has that, one of my colleagues, Batya Salomon, she calls it a VR suit. The body is the VR suit, and it comes with that program of, I'm here to work on self-esteem. I'm here to learn to speak up for myself. I'm here to set boundaries. But the soul simply has chosen that work. The childhood is what creates the scenarios so that that will be the work that we're called to do. We don't come down with a letter that has instructions. We aren't born with a tattooed description of our life's work. We have to come to it through the relationships and situations in our lives. So in thinking about, and this is me giving my personal 2 cents now rather than the Kabbalistic take, I've come to understand the traumatic experiences, whether it can be getting the silent treatment as a child.
That's the small T, they call it. There's small T's and big T's, yep.
The silent treatment, I don't know, in my family, we have the middle child syndrome that's very distinct. And I've seen it with adults as well, very common issues with, kids, 3 kids. It's always with 3. It's not with 4. The second child has these signature issues. But the reality is we call it tikkun. Mental health professionals call it trauma.
Yeah.
And when I had that, that's me, Elisheva's personal opinion, editorial moment. When I had that revelation, it was a game changer.
Totally.
because it's not something, I feel the stigma around mental health was hide your wounds, pretend you're okay. If you feel damaged, don't let it show. And in the spiritual work, the growth only comes when we work on that stuff.
Yeah.
So when I started to, read and learn and study about all these things, it was like to take, we had it in a way opposite. You came from the mental health background and learned the Kabbalah. I came from Kabbalah and started to learn about mental health. Yeah. And the truth is, it's the same thing with different language.
That's right.
When I hear people
totally
talk,
the same thing with
I read a book recently. I think I shared some pieces of it even in a few episodes, called Permission to Feel. Mm-hmm. And it literally, at the end of the book, it was like either he sat in a Kabbalah class or he read Kabbalah. It just was so, his language, I think his name is Mark Brackett, his language, but so clearly the work that we are teaching in level 1 courses, the ability to pause, to allow, to name it, right? One of the things we talk about in Kabbalah is that it's really important to understand what is your ego. You can't just work on your ego. You have to give it a name. Is your issue judgment? Is it control? Is it depression? There's got to be a name to it, which is basically a form of acceptance. Not this is who I am, but this is what my work is. And then the work begins.
Exactly. And it's so beautiful. The pause is like one of my favorite Kabbalistic tools. And to describe it to clients is a beautiful thing because it's that light bulb, right? So you have the light bulb with a positive and negative, and then you have the filament. And the filament is the resistor. And the greater the filament, right, the greater the watt of the bulb, the more light you're revealing. And so to realize that in that moment, that's restriction, right? In that moment, when you make that pause, you're allowing that system to happen and you're allowing yourself to kind of go into the difficulty instead of trying to avoid it or numb yourself away from it, distract away from it. The idea that's so beautiful is something happens, you resist the urge, resist that urge
to react. Right. It's not a denial or suppression or repression.
It's a process. It's circuitry that happens where then you can, I call it metabolizing the emotion. So what you're doing is you're in there, you're feeling angry and you hold it, and then you're allowing a force to help you out. So you're allowing this force to help you out, and you're allowing it to turn into something else. And so you have no idea what's going to happen, but something's going to shift. If you can just pause that, then some magic is happening in the pause. And it is usually the light of the Creator coming in to give you a little assist. And then what comes out of you is something magic or something you get good news. A phone call comes and somebody got a good test result because you restricted in that moment. You realize how far reaching it is. And that is one of the most powerful tools that you can use that I explain to my clients. The other one of my favorites is the lampshade. So this idea that, what's the light bulb? What is the watt of the light bulb? And if you put a lampshade on it, what does it do to the bulb? And they say, well, it dims it a little. Yeah. Now throw another veil on that.
It doesn't dim the bulb, it dims the lamp.
That's the point I'm making. So I say, okay, keep throwing it on. Now what do you see? Darkness. Okay. So is the bulb different inside? No, it's the exact same. That's our journey. Our journey together is to reveal the light of it that's within you. And that's where we're going. So we're going to keep removing the veils in this work together through whatever modality you use. Mine is body-centered self-acceptance training. With other people, it's something else, but that's the work. And what's happening is who you really are and have always been is revealed. And that's what real transformation is. Transformation isn't becoming somebody else. It's becoming the biggest version of yourself. And that's the beauty of it, is you just have to be you.
Yeah.
My sister said to me before I came, you need
Your sister who's also a social worker.
Yeah. My whole family.
I just want to make it clear.
My sister, yeah.
They're not civilians.
And she said, you need a mantra before you go today.
Okay.
And I said, I can only be who I really am. And that's one that my teacher, Cherie, who taught me the method I use, that she's used with me and other people. And I find that
Say that again?
I can only be who I really am.
Wow.
I don't have to be somebody else. I don't have to perform. I just can be me. And we're just being more of ourselves. And we're not trying to be other people. And we don't need to influence other people. We just need to shine who we are. We don't need to bump up against people. We just need to shine. Unless that's something you need to work on, which is being assertive. That's something I've needed to work on. So it all depends where you're coming from. Are you coming from some sort of growth and spiritual transformation? Or are you coming from that reactive childhood space?
And for people who are looking to bring therapy, or maybe this whole conversation is new to them and they didn't consider the mental health piece as part of their spiritual work, what advice would you give them? What would you say is the best way to open yourself up to receive that support? Because I think one of the biggest steps is asking for help.
That's what I say. Find a trusted witness or a person to tell your truth to. And it's best to be a professional because of, I don't know, the pressures now are really creating a mental health crisis for people. So you really need to find somebody and just start with that. Start with someone that you know, strange things happening. People are firing their therapists now. And the reason they are is because therapists are making the mistake of having an opinion. They're not coming to you for an opinion. They're not even coming to you to problem solve with them, although sometimes you can't help yourself. But they're really coming to you to express their truth and it to be safe. That's all we want. You know, the problem comes when we were growing up is when someone judges what you said or do. Then we hold back or we adapt around it, and that becomes a trauma. So that's what we're healing, is a space where we, is that place where we didn't get to say how we really feel and to really dig into that deeply. So I would say that's the number one thing. And then, in Kabbalah, they say there's only two things we have control of. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it's your reaction to things and the environment you put yourself into. So I would also say find a community that supports you and supports this work. I can say for me, having a spiritual community, it's people that they'll let me vent. We have our moments where I'm just going to complain. I love complaining, but that's not helpful. But they'll let me, and then they'll give me a shift like you do for me, which is that you give me a perspective I haven't thought of. Or kind of go, well, you have to clean up my side of the room a little bit, And that's, to me, where you begin to build a community of people that your goal is to be more and to be better and to influence the world in a positive way and to grow and change. And most of the people in my life now are really those people. And it's a community of people and a place where it's so easy to fall back into negativity. Into my fold is worries. I can go into worries really easy. It's just a thing from childhood trauma, and it's something I've done a lot of work on. But it comes up for me is to worry, and to go to lectures, to go to for me it's a lot of Kabbalah classes where they hit on these right at the right time. Kabbalah comes to you exactly when it needs to come to you, and the classes come to you, or the lecture comes to you, and it's exactly what you need to hear. And you're like, are you, I'm streaming it. I'm like, are you listening to my conversation? Because it's exactly what I need to hear. So it's like this twofold thing where you're working it both deeply internally, and then you're creating a perspective, this bigger picture perspective. And to me, that's kind of the dance that you're doing. And then you get outside of yourself also. You have to thoughts are dangerous things. And so you kind of have to have some tools to stop those thoughts, don't let them cascade out, so and get out there and do things for other people. I know when I get up in the morning is the most vulnerable time for me, and negativity wants to come in. I can't wait to jump in at a moment when I'm relaxed. And so I know that I need to either start with a meditation or some breath, or just get out of bed and start sharing, start doing what I do for others. I enjoy it. It gives me energy. So get going. And then I've won the day by the end of the day.
I have another question for you. I'm trying to decide if I want to save it for the next episode. I think I'm going to ask you now so that we can put a pin in it. You said something that made me fall off my chair figuratively.
Okay.
And you breezed right through it. So that's why I want to dial back and make sure that we don't leave it hanging there, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that's jaw fell to the floor. You were saying that our emotions are 3-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
And there are probably people listening who haven't had a 3-year-old yet. The visual is more of the nagging toddler where you're busy doing other things. And then eventually you can't take I call it the Calgon moment. You know, you can't take it anymore. You just look at them and you say, what? I remember myself doing that to one of my children who was probably younger than 3. And then I couldn't believe what I had done. And I went to the room and I cried. And then I grabbed my Zohar and I came back out and repair. But what is, and I'm leading the witness a bit here, but what is so dangerous about ignoring the 3-year-old? Why is that such a problem? Ignoring
it grows.
Emotional. Okay, there.
It's going to keep growing and layering, and it's going to make you sick. Eventually, you will physically be sick. At first, it will be behaviors that you adapt around because we're very achievement oriented. So you can be, mentally, successful people are not the most mentally healthy people. So, it will grow and it will cause you to engage in unhealthy behaviors, not be able to sustain relationships. It just keeps taking different forms and ultimately will make you sick, which is what happened to me before I really started to deep dive into my personal work. Was I was getting physically sick. So that's what happens when you ignore it. So you don't want to ignore the 3-year-old.
No.
And the actual 3-year-old might become a psychopath or a sociopath.
And the work, obviously the work that Karen and I do is different, but the goal is very similar. And I can think of so many people over the years that I've met giving lectures in different cities and things like that, where they say, what you said was so beautiful and it resonated with me so deeply. I just don't have time. And we don't have the luxury of time. I think that that's the emergence of all of everything that's bringing mental health to the forefront today is the result of realizing we don't have the luxury to ignore this anymore.
Well, that's where the bigger picture really comes in. Like when you look at the world, I think about the pandemic, I was never more busy. And as a therapist. And what was happening is people didn't have the distraction to numb what they've been sitting on for their whole life. So it was uncovering things, eating disorders, things that I hadn't been able to get to with my clients because they were able to, move. But it's like set people in place and you couldn't distract. And so these, I call them like constrictions in time, all these major upheavals that happen. Each one brings you closer, to what's underneath it, sort of the meta message, and even with all the division between people now, it's someone underneath saying, listen to me, listen to my truth, listen to my pain, please listen to my pain, because that's what the division is about, is people not listening to my pain. Their personal pain, but it's, so they keep trying to come at it, listen to me, and it keeps getting uglier and uglier and ugly. But really, if you stop and you look at what it's really about, it's about my personal pain. And I need somebody to hear it.
Wow.
So...
I think this is one episode that not only you need to hear multiple times, but you probably need to listen to like on half speed to let everything in. It's almost like the Da Vinci Code, like the secrets are in here. And I'm so glad that we had this conversation today. And I'm so glad we're going to continue it in next week's episode. Again, I think it's a beautiful, what's the word? Not coincidence, synchronicity, that we have these energies in these weeks that are really calling us to do deep, maybe some of the heavier work than the rest of the year. It needs to be, said that especially during the holidays when we should be happy, celebrating, rejoicing, oftentimes it's the most painful and difficult times for people. Yes. So even more so, I'm glad that we're having this conversation and that our listeners have a tool going into the holidays, or even I find sometimes it's not only celebrating or spending time with family or people you don't see all the time. Sometimes it's also the lack of busyness, like you said, with COVID, that prevents you from being able to escape the 3-year-old and its demands and its needs. So I'm really happy that we could.
And people are taking it out on the internet.
Well, unfortunately, they think it's a safe place to take it.
It's not a safe place. No.
And I remind my kids all the time, this is why you're not getting your own device, because it is so toxic.
It's very toxic.
Right. Well, hopefully you're using your device to listen to podcasts like Weekly Energy Boost and
stuff.
to absorb and immerse yourself in wisdom that's constructive and supportive. And Weekly Energy Boost, as you probably already know, is available on all podcast platforms, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. You can visit our website, weeklyenergyboost.com, where you can find out more about our listeners, things we think are important you can find out more about our guests. You can't find out anything about our listeners on our website, by the way. Find out about our guests and also anything else that we think is important for our listeners to know about. You can click the donate button and support Weekly Energy Boost. But really the best way to support us is to continue to share every episode, especially this one, with everyone you know. I was going to say your loved ones, but also not your loved ones, because everybody could benefit from episodes like today's. And next week, we're going to be continuing the conversation, but shifting gears, talking more about loss and pain and working through grief, similar to the episode that we had a few years ago, but I think we're in a different place now, and it's gonna be different. So join us next week, and we'll see you there on Weekly Energy Boost.